Welcome to the Craft of Coaching podcast, where we dive into what it truly takes to become a skilled, confident life coach. I'm your host, Kate, head of the CLCC or Credentialed Life Coach Collective, an ICF accredited Level 1 coach training program. We combine courage, coaching, and community to offer you more than just a training program, but a life-changing experience where you use your own personal transformation as the learning ground for supporting your clients. On this podcast, we explore how you can use coaching skills to support your clients or expand your own growth, all grounded in evidence-based coaching practices. Learn more about our program and get free resources for becoming a life coach at teamclcc.com. And now, here's today's episode. Today's episode is going to be for the newer emerging coach or the person considering becoming a coach who is really intimidated by or overwhelmed by content creation. And I think that this is an important topic to talk about because one of the things that happens for people who are interested in becoming a coach or starting to dip their toe into coaching is that the business side of coaching starts to feel really overwhelming. And I am here to tell you today that the reason it feels so overwhelming is because you don't have a system set up for it. And let me tell you, I've earned my chops here in being able to say this. I am director of training for an accredited life coach training program. This means that I am not just responsible in my work week for the training of the coaches in our program, but also the admin stuff on the back end, the communications that come through from the ICF, making sure that all of our facilitators have what they need, updating the curriculum. Then I'm also responsible for working with my own one-on-one coaching clients. Okay, so that's like its whole other thing. And then, of course, you are listening to this podcast, so you know that I'm recording podcasts. And if you follow me on social media, you know that I'm putting content out on social media. And so how does one get all of those things done? Well, we're going to talk about that today. I'm also going to add in that I've been pretty open about the fact that my dad recently passed. And when he passed, he was in the hospital in the ICU before he died. And that meant I flew out of state to go be with him. And while I was with him, my business was still running. My digital programs that people can purchase and start at any time, like the Courageous Living program or the Coaching Blueprint program, those programs are, running on automation without me having to literally be there to hit a button to get someone enrolled in those programs. And I do not have a big team of people who are working for me who are doing everything while I sit back. When my dad died, there were absolutely things that I did need to attend to in the middle of all that. But because I have a content creation system in place, a lot of things were moving. Even as I was dealing with that, a lot of things were getting automated. The other thing that I want to state up front is that I remember when I was first becoming a coach, there was this big push from a lot of marketing people to basically just say, outsource everything. It's so easy. You just go hire someone overseas for $1 an hour or whatever, and you outsource everything. Well, I'm here to tell you that a lot of the people who work in countries where the exchange rate for the dollar is better, and therefore they might charge less than what someone might charge in the United States. And I'm primarily speaking with a US-based audience here, but I think a lot of the same things apply in a lot of other countries. What I'm about to say applies in a lot of other countries. Essentially, those virtual assistants, they've figured out like, hey, I should be earning more in a lot of cases. And I also don't think that you should outsource everything in your business. I actually think that my business runs better if there are certain things that are in my domain. And yes, I do have VA help, but it is not a full-fledged team of dozens of people. I actually have to put work in every single day. The next thing that I want to speak to, and this is all a setup for this content creation, is that part of what was happening when a lot of these marketing air quotes, experts were saying, just outsource everything. They were also not taking into account the fact that most coaches have to work a full-time job while they are building their coaching business. And I have lived that life. I have 100% lived that life. If you don't already own the Coaching Blueprint program, I think you should head to coachingblueprintprogram.com and you should have that program, because I made that program about marketing literally while I was also working full time. And I have a module that's in there that's called 4-Hour Marketing, because I basically had gotten my marketing down to just 4 hours a week. And there's a lot of tips in there for how you can market yourself more easily, how you can get comfortable with visibility, things of that nature. But I really cannot say enough that having a coaching business is very scalable. You can put as much or as little time into it as you want. You do not have to be on every single social media channel. You do not have to market yourself constantly. But I do want to be realistic. You do have to do some marketing. And so the sooner you figure out a system that lets you do as little marketing work as possible, yet still get results so that you can focus on the work you do love, the better. Treat it like a skill. Treat it like a subject in school that you have to study for. And that when you study for it and you understand the subject, you might not love it, but you can pass the test. Great. That's all you have to do with marketing. You do not have to love marketing. You just have to know enough marketing skill to be able to get results. And content creation is part of that. So let's get into it. And first, let's talk about the content graveyard. You probably have one. Most coaches do. I wouldn't say I have so much of a content graveyard as I have a content repository. So what do I mean by that? Your content graveyard, or in my case, repository, it's where your half-written blog posts live, or Substack posts. It's where you had a screenshot of an idea that you got off of Instagram and then you didn't go back through your phone later and say, you know what, that was a kind of interesting quote. And I was thinking I may turn it into my own reel. And then, you just get busy with other things. It is deciding that you're going to set up your newsletter, emailing your newsletter people for 3 weeks, and then it just feels like you can't quite get it done, or you got an email draft that maybe felt really good in the moment and then sat in the folder for 3 weeks until now it feels outdated to send. It's the podcast episode idea that you wrote down on a sticky note and now you can't find it. Okay? The thing about the content graveyard is this. It does not just represent unfinished work. It represents a pattern. It represents a cycle that goes something like this. You get inspired, you start taking little steps, or you make a plan, and you're feeling like, yeah, I'm going to do this. But then life intervenes, you get busy, the plan falls apart, then you feel guilty because the plan fell apart, and then the guilt makes it harder to start again. And maybe eventually you do start again, but often the cycle just repeats. You've got a new plan, you go, fresh start, I'm going to do it. You get inspired, and maybe you get a little further this time, and then it keeps happening. So you really got to look at what that pattern is, especially if as a coach, you're in a slow season right now, if things are more quiet in the business. The content graveyard probably feels heavier than usual. You know intellectually that you need to show up and you need to be visible, that you need to be putting things into the world that build the kind of trust and relationships that are going to produce more client inquiries a month from now, 6 months from now. It is absolutely, if you don't have clients right now, you want to go back and look at what you were doing 6 months ago, 3 months ago. And you know that that's what's going on. And yet somehow knowing better doesn't always translate to doing better. And if you're a coach, you know what that feels like. And you empathize with what it feels like when your clients are saying, I know better. Why can't I do better? Because it's tricky. Now, I want to name something else about this. For most coaches, inconsistent content creation is some parts a time management problem, but it is not always a time management problem. Now, I've talked about time management before in this podcast, and I've offered here's how I do things and but I don't want to just treat this like a time management problem, because otherwise you just are going to collect more time management systems and tools. And the time management framing, if we only look at that, is going to miss something more that might be going on underneath, because time management just isn't the issue alone. Because here's the thing, you have time to scroll. You have time to read other people's content. You have time for the low stakes things that don't require you to put your ideas, your voice, your perspective into the world. The time is there. What's harder is the willingness to be visible. The willingness to be visible. Content for coaches is an act of visibility. And sometimes visibility feels weird. I will just share that, like, for instance, with my dad passing, I'm grieving right now. I'm actively grieving. I'm not crying right here in this moment, but I've cried today. I cried yesterday. I've got grief happening in my life. And so sometimes it almost feels weird, like showing up online and telling people, hey, I believe in you. Telling coaches, hey, I'm actually really excited about the next cohort of CLCC that's enrolling. And if you want to learn more about becoming a coach, head to teamclcc.com. It feels weird to say that right now. It feels weird to record this podcast because I have this other stuff going on. Visibility feels weird, especially at times where there's incongruence. It feels weird to be visible when you also know that parts of you feel insecure about being visible. And visibility also carries risk. There's this risk of being seen, and maybe people don't like what they see. There's the risk of saying something that doesn't land, something that gets misunderstood, something that someone disagrees with. There's a risk that you might put stuff out there and it gets ignored entirely, and that then you're going to feel like the silence just confirms whatever you're most afraid is true about you and your work. So we really need to be clear that that is not a time management or scheduling problem. That's a courage problem. And courage problems can be worked with. I'm not trying to name this harshly. I just want to name it honestly, because solving the wrong problem, as you know, if you've ever coached a client who's tried to solve for the wrong problem, in this case, solving the wrong problem is how coaches end up with 17 different content calendars and still like nothing is actually getting pushed. So today we're going to work on both. We're going to work on the system you need, but we're also going to be talking about the thing under the system because you need both. So we're going to talk about why content disappears when life gets busy. And we're going to talk about simple, functional content systems and what that looks like for someone who is a solo coach or a small coaching business where you don't have an entire media team. If you have ever looked at some of the more well-known coaches out there and you're going, how are they putting out so much content? Because they have a team, hun. They have multiple full-time people who are getting that content out there. They have people who can take one video that person recorded and chop it up and make it into 5 different videos that get pushed out. And I'm also going to talk to you today, by the way, about batching, because I really have to say I had to learn time management, and batching is the approach that really makes consistency possible without requiring daily inspiration. And of course, we're going to talk about the visibility piece because that inner work is part of this as well. And the inner work around visibility, I think, is one of the things that really gels for a lot of people in the CLCC program. If you've looked at our catalog, you've seen the testimonials. There are multiple testimonials where people are talking about this program helped me to figure out what I was doing in my business and to feel more visible and to have more courage around saying what I wanted to say. And that's why our program works on the personal growth side as well as teaching you the coaching skills that you need. So let's get into it, starting with why does content disappear? Okay. So content tends to disappear for you. The reason you think about it or you half do it and it doesn't quite get out there for a couple different reasons. And they're usually operating in combination. The first is that if you don't have a deadline for your content creation, then you can always push it out. Your client sessions are scheduled at a specific time. Your administrative tasks have consequences if they don't get done. Like if you don't pay your taxes on your coaching business, like the IRS is going to say something to you. But content creation does not have any of that. It's purely self-directed. It's an internal motivation. It's optional in the short term. And there's psychology behind this. There's research on self-regulation and task completion. And I wanted to bring that up today because clients struggle with this, okay? People struggle with, how do I make myself do the thing that I don't absolutely have to do by a certain time-bound deadline? So there's this psychologist named Roy Baumeister, Baumeister, and he talked about this idea of ego depletion and the idea that willpower and your ability or capacity to self-regulate are finite resources that actually deplete with use. So essentially, when your cognitive and emotional resources are stretched, discretionary tasks are often the first to get dropped. So that is why you had that plan to set up a 4-part newsletter series that was going to tell all your newsletter followers about a new coaching program that you're going to put out there. And your kid came home sick. There was a note home from school with your other kid. The dishwasher went on the fritz. Your partner wanted to talk to you about a stressful money thing. And it's like, that's why you want to watch Grey's Anatomy reruns all night long on the couch by the time it hits 7 o'clock. So life gets hard, things get stressful, things get busy. Content becomes the thing that you push. And I want to say again, I get this because the people that I've worked with in CLCC, the coaches I've trained, and speaking for myself too, I don't want to be performative. I want to make authentic content. I don't want to sound like a robot regurgitating rah-rah ideas about putting yourself out there. I want to feel inspired. And the thing is, it is really hard to feel inspired all the time when you have stressful things that are happening. You're normal, okay? So it's not that you don't value doing the content creation work. It's that there is no immediate consequence for not doing it. And life gets busy. And if you don't have a system in place, it's like, whoa. Now, let's get into the inspiration piece, because this is a second reason that many coaches approach content creation in a way that fails them. They approach it in a way that requires inspiration to be present. They only sit down to write something when they feel like writing. They only record when they feel like they have something to say. They post when an idea strikes them. And that's great if you're in a vibe and the energy is high. But it fails completely when motivation is low. And that's unfortunately when often your consistent content creation strategy really matters the most. So a system that requires you to feel inspired is not a system. It's just hope. It's good intentions. And you gotta understand that. And we'll talk about what to do about that in today's episode, so keep listening. Now, the third reason why content creation often is not treated as a priority, and I think this often doesn't get talked about enough, is that content asks you to be public in a way that feels risky. And so it's not as simple as if you were to simply execute a task for your corporate salary job. You might be asking yourself, hey, I've been in the corporate world. I've created presentation decks before. Why the hell is it so hard for me to just sit down and create one tiny little post when I can create a 10-page deck that I'm going to present to leadership? And I don't have a thing about that. Well, every piece of content is at some level a declaration of you. You know, that presentation you're doing for corporate isn't you, but what you post online is often a reflection of here's who you are, what you think, what you believe about the work you do. And if you are still building confidence in your voice, in your positioning, and that's most new and emerging coaches, declaring that feels heavier. It carries weight. You know, the blank page is not just a creative challenge. It's an invitation to be visible, and visibility is scary. So take a moment to reflect on this. Which of these apply to you? Which of these might be driving your content inconsistency? Because what you understand about yourself from this is going to change what you need to do about it. If your content creation has no external deadline, then maybe you need a system with external structure. If your content creation issues come from only doing it when you feel inspired, then you need a batching approach that really just decouples creation from inspiration. And if the real issue here is confidence around visibility, then you need some inner work, which you can do. You can receive coaching around, right? This is something I coach coaches around. So I want to help you build all three. So what does a simple content system actually looks like? Because the other thing going on here is that things get too complicated, too platform specific, too elaborate to sustain. And the platform specific thing, by the way, can I just say, just drop the idea that you have to curate content for every single platform. I know this is going to sound heretical. And there's a lot of marketing people who are out there who are like, there's no point in even creating one piece of content and expecting it to perform well on every single channel. Great. Don't expect it to perform well on every single channel. And at the same time, I have seen content perform really well on one channel, not as well on another, and then the next day it flip-flops. And the content that I'm creating that is the same on TikTok and the same on Instagram performs really well on the channel that just the day before it didn't perform so well on, and really badly on the other one. I don't understand the algorithms, and I am not going to drive myself crazy trying to make sure that I have a totally different strategy for every single platform that's out there. I'm just not. I don't have the time. And I got clients and I've got a successful business. So, take what you will from that information. But this is your permission slip if you have been feeling like, oh my God, it's all too much. I have to create different content for everything. No, you don't. No, you don't. You can create on one platform and just repost it across different platforms. And yeah, sometimes the same content on one platform is going to bomb and do really well on another platform. That's just how it goes. Don't worry about it too much. So let's get into a functional content system for you. And again, I'm thinking of this in terms of like a solo coach, a small coaching business, small as in maybe you have one person who's helping you or helping you part-time. I think there are 4 components to this. Grab a pen and paper if you feel like taking notes. One is a content bank. So when you get the ideas, where are you banking them? The next is a batching schedule. And this is where I'm going to get into batch content creation. The third one is minimum viable task completion. Maybe we could call this minimum viable publishing cadence. Like basically, what is your bare minimum for what you're going to put out there? And last, are you self-aware or looking around at your environment to figure out where you can reduce friction? So you're looking at what might get in your way. Let's start with the content bank. Content bank is simply a running list of ideas. They're not polished, they're not scheduled, they're just captured. I have a couple of different content banks. I'll be scrolling online, I'll see something like a quote or something, and I'll go, oh, I really like that quote. I'd like to turn it into something longer, a video, I'll screenshot it on my phone. I also have, I'm like a very big journaler. I journal a lot, but I also find I like to write by hand. And I also find that I just prefer to take my Moleskine notebooks and jot down ideas in it. So like I have one right now where like I'm just flipping through my Moleskine right now. I'm flipping to a random page. I'd like to do an article on articulating that the locus of power is with the person being trained, not with the teacher training you, and looking at how people sometimes project onto teachers instead of fully owning their own power. And at some point in time, I personally would like to write some kind of an article on how teachers can be aware that that dynamic is present and do what they can to not fuel that dynamic and fuel that projection. So I have a couple different ways that I bank content. You could do a Google Doc. You could do a note on your phone. You could do a voice memo you send yourself while driving. By the way, I also have a voice memo app because sometimes I am driving and I have a thought like, oh, I really want to do that. And I just hit record and I riff. The only rule with content banking is this: capture ideas when they come instead of relying on them to still be there when you sit down to create. Ideas are not usually your problem. It's the capture and then translation into something more. So you got to build the habit of just capturing everything. If you have a client session, and I feel like every coach has had this moment where you're coaching someone and suddenly you just like, bam, you drop you drop the mic with like, you say something so concisely that just gets to the heart of the matter, and your client is like, oh my God, I never thought about it that way before. And then you're kind of mentally going, I never thought about it that way before either. I need to write this down. After your client session, make sure you write it down, okay? If you keep getting asked a question over and over and over online or by your clients, that probably means it's a question that's on people's hearts and you need to create some content around it. So you got to get in the habit of writing down those sorts of questions. The thing you wish someone had told you earlier in your coaching journey, the reframe that's made all the difference for you. Whatever it is, all of it just goes in your content bank, and you're never going to use all of it. That's fine. That's fine. Having too many ideas, though, is a much better problem than staring at a blank page and going, what am I doing? And if I can just tell you one little side note, when I was writing The Courage Habit, it was not yet titled The Courage Habit. And I was actually like looking through some of my content bank, and I was kind of, it was like the idea had not fully gelled around talking about habit formation. There was something floating around in my mind about people really needing to be consistent with practicing tools that would build their courage. And I was flipping through one of my content banks, just kind of trying to see what was there. And suddenly I saw this note I had written down, The Courage Habit. And it was write something about how you can create courage as a habit. And it was like, eureka! Oh my God. So, and it had been written down, by the way, years before. So you never know when these sorts of things are going to have their moment with you. And that's fine. Again, having too many ideas is a much better problem than just staring at a blank page and not knowing what to do. Now let's talk about batching the work, okay? Batching is the practice of creating content in blocks rather than daily. Now, some people might say, no, I have to show up daily. And there's value in showing up daily, okay? I have a writing practice. I get up early in the morning. I do my morning routine, meditation, all the things, and then I sit down and I write. And usually I'm writing fiction. And I listen to the same playlist every day when I'm writing fiction. And I do believe that there is something about the habit of it and the playlist and the time of morning that like just turns my brain on for like, okay, it's like I'm entering the portal for me to sit down and do this writing practice, okay? It's totally fine if you have a daily practice. But what becomes problematic is when you don't really know what you're going to say and you feel like, oh my God, I don't know what to say. And then you're sitting down each day and you're feeling blocked day after day after day. And then it's like, what am I doing? What I'm saying is shift out of that and get into batch processing. Instead of trying to produce one piece of content every day, which requires the daily motivation, the daily creativity, the daily willingness to shore up your reserves and find the confidence to be visible, you set aside one block of time once a week, once every 2 weeks, where you create multiple pieces at once. Today, I will be recording multiple podcast episodes in a block of time. And the reason that I will be doing this is because I know that when I first hit record on podcasting, I have trouble like just speaking as concisely. Sometimes I stutter more. It's kind of an odd thing. It's like I just got to get warmed up or something. And then once I'm warmed up for podcasting, I don't want to lose that vibe. So I'm like, okay, I'm warmed up, I'm primed, I'm ready to go. Let me create several in a row. The mental cost of getting into a creative mode, by the way, is only paid one time when you do that system. The friction of setting up I got to open up the right tabs and I got to get into the right headspace. I'm trying to decide what to say. When you set that up once and you kind of get warmed up and you create just one video, Don't just create it, post it, and then move about your day. My recommendation is create that one video, put it into your drafts, flip through your content bank and go, oh, okay, I could create this too. I mean, if you did your makeup to create the video, I mean, you don't have to wear makeup. By the way, I love being in an age where they have filters that don't change your face but make it look like you have makeup on. I'm going to be so transparent with you. I use those all the time. If you've ever been like, wow, Kate's makeup is looking really great, it's probably a filter. I'm probably not wearing makeup. I probably have a filter on that just makes it look like I'm wearing makeup. And I don't have any issues with that. So if somebody is like, oh my God, I don't like that. Well, I'm so sorry to disappoint you. It's less effort than actually having to put makeup on. So you're getting hopefully the point that I'm getting at, which is that when you batch process, when you do take a one-time task and get all of those tasks done, it's so much easier. Newsletters, same thing. Don't just write one weekly newsletter and move on with your life. If you're writing a newsletter to people or a Substack to people or some kind of something that goes out to people on a schedule, like weekly, just go ahead and create like 2, 3, 4 in a row and then schedule them to go out once a week. I promise you, this is such a game changer. You produce 3, 5, 7 pieces in one session rather than trying to replicate that process every single day. Next thing, I talked about like minimum viable task or minimum viable publishing cadence. This is where you get into a non-negotiable for yourself. This is not about ideal, okay? This is, I will do this. This is my bare minimum that I will do, even if life is hard, even if motivation is low, even if I'm stressed out. And for most solo coaches, that's one piece of content per week, like one email, one social post, one long form content like something on Substack. That's it. That's the floor. Everything above that is the bonus. And I think you have to define the floor very specifically because it removes the all or nothing thinking that causes you to abandon content entirely when you fall behind. And this is something you can, an idea you can introduce and work with on clients as well. What is the bare minimum that they will commit to? Because there's 10 other things that I would love to be working on every single week. And they're ideals, and I have my content bank, and I have different task list systems that I track those things in, but I know that I might not get to them. But my bare minimum, that I'm going to do. It is rare for me to miss my bare minimum. And defining this is so important also because when you are only in the ideal of what you quote unquote should be doing and then you miss it, that invites feelings of I'm a failure. I can't stick to it. I can't trust myself. So don't miss your bare minimum. And if you set your bare minimum realistically, it will be genuinely rare. Genuinely rare. Last, to set up your system, you got to reduce friction. Friction reduction is all the stuff that goes into making it easier for you to create something and hit publish. And this is going to look different for every person, but the principle is essentially the same. You identify where you regularly get stuck and you remove the stuckness in advance. So I mentioned that I write fiction, usually fiction, not always. Sometimes it's personal essay. Sometimes it's work related. It's something that's going to go out to all of you. But I usually do that first thing in the morning. And why first thing in the morning? I'm reducing the friction of getting into my day and thinking, oh, this other thing's more important, or I don't know, I don't feel like it. It's just like, boom, get up, do my morning practice, do my writing. That's it. I'm removing friction. If you get stuck choosing what to create, your content bank solves that. You've got lots of ideas. If you get stuck on graphics, it's like, girl, get into Canva, get 3-4 simple templates ready, and stick to it. And by the way, stop trying to redo your graphics all the time. If you're like, Kate, how did you know? Because I know. Stop trying to redesign your graphics in your website all the time. Stop. The graphics you've got are fine. The website you've got is fine. If you're laughing with me, I personally would like to redo the Team CLCC website right now and the Your Courageous Life website right now. Like I would very much like to, but I recognize that like there's no ROI on that for me in this moment compared to other things that are a higher ROI. So I know what it's like, but don't get stuck on the graphics. Just get your templates and use them. If you get stuck on editing, trying to make it all perfect, look, you've got to make a decision in advance. Done is better than perfect. Mediocre content that gets published consistently will always outperform on, I'm willing to actually bank on this. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Substack, whatever your platform of choice is. The content creator on any of those platforms who makes mediocre content but shows up every single day will always outperform the content creator who like has to have a great video setup and perfect lighting and like really awesome captions with like a fancy font and blah, 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 blah. Basically, every unnecessary decision point is an opportunity for friction to come in and the process to stall. So you need to remove as many of those as you can before you sit down to create. Now let's get more into the batching. I want to make that more concrete because it could sound great in practice. It sounds great as an idea and can fall apart in practice if you're not really clear on what it looks like. So a batching session would look like this. You block, let's say 2 hours, okay? You open your content bank. You choose 3 to 5 ideas. You're thinking, okay, I want to do some written content or some social posts. You map out the core of each piece, not polished, just draft. You do a single pass for editing. And then you schedule everything to go out. I use Buffer. I think that's my tool of choice, but there's tons of other options that are out there. I believe you can even schedule things from within Canva these days. So you could create graphics in Canva. And then you close the laptop and you're done for the week or for 2 weeks. Okay. It might look a little different if you're producing video or audio content. It might be you block a half day once a month and you script or outline 3 to 4 pieces of content in advance. You set up your recording environment once. You record everything back to back. Speaking of recording environments, I am not in a recording studio right now. I have a Yeti, Y-E-T-I, blue mic. It is possible that you might hear background noises occasionally. If I am recording a podcast episode and that is the moment that like a really loud truck is outside, I do hit stop and wait for the truck to pass and then start again. I've been doing this for many years now. I have never once received an angry email from someone going, you know, your sound quality really, really bothered me that I heard like a dog bark one time in the background, not one time. And I'm just in case anybody has ever felt enraged by that and they've wanted to send me that email. I'm sorry. And I'm not sorry. Like I'm sitting at my regular work desk in front of my regular work computer. And the upgrade that I have is a great mic. That's it. Okay. So you do not need a fancy setup. You do not need soundproofed walls. You just record and you go. Use a tool for editing that can reduce time costs. There's a lot of tools out there. I've heard things about Descript. I've heard things about Riverside. Great. Awesome. Descript, I think, is what I use for video. I actually can't remember off the top of my head. And this will probably make a lot of people laugh, but what do I use for podcast? GarageBand on my Mac. Yeah, GarageBand. Not even anything fancy. And the reason that I do that is because I've heard too many horror stories from people who have recorded entire podcast episodes in a third-party system on a cloud, and then it gets lost, and I just don't have the time. So it's just like, okay, I just record, export to MP3, put it in a folder on the cloud, and my VA can take it and put it into Buzzsprout and like get the description tweaked and like blah, blah, blah. Like my VA can do other things from there, or I do it, depending on what other priorities I want her on. You schedule the releases. 1 half day of your effort can produce a month of content. The key to making batching work for you is you separate the creation phase from the editing and publishing phase. You don't try to do all 3 simultaneously, okay? So like I'm going to record all my podcast episodes simultaneously, And then after I'm done recording these episodes, I will then upload them or do the next step in getting them ready to go out to the public. I'm not going to record and then try to create the graphic and then try to create the description and then try to get it set up for the public and then try to get the blog post right. That would be too much jumping around. It's just batch, record. And then it's going to be batch, newsletter. And then it's going to be batch, graphic. It's just batch process everything. I'm telling you, this works so much better. You can give yourself permission to create messily and just let it be the done is better than the perfect. All right. Hopefully I'm selling you on some of this and how possible it is for you to do this. But I want to get back to the visibility piece. I don't want to neglect that because I think it's so important. I don't want to leave today without it. I said earlier that inconsistent content is often a visibility problem rather than a time management problem. So let's close the loop on that. You need to do some inner work on visibility if you want to have a business. The inner work for content visibility is essentially the same inner work that coaches guide their clients through in any context where fear of judgment is operating. And if you've ever supported another person around fear of judgment, then you know that what they are amplifying in their head, what they are focusing on, the rejection or the critique that they are so afraid of is actually probably not as big of a deal as they think it is. And I don't say that like as in they're dumb. I've done it too. I'm saying it just as when you're on the outside of it, you see that the problem is so much smaller or more doable than the person stuck in their fear realizes. So apply that to yourself. Name the fear specifically. Instead of saying, oh, I'm just not good at consistency, which is a character judgment that's not very accurate or useful. Instead, just go, okay, I'm afraid. I'm afraid I'll put something out there and it won't resonate. I'm afraid that might mean that maybe I'm not good at this. I'm afraid someone will disagree with me publicly. I'm afraid of being seen as someone who's trying too hard or wants attention or is putting themselves forward in a way that just isn't warranted. Name your fears, write it down. Ask yourself the same coaching questions you might ask a client, like, hey, what would you do in this situation if you knew, like, the fear is going to be there, but I'm doing it anyway? Like, friend, this matters. It matters that you're doing this work. If a coach or someone who supports mental health and a positive sense of self has ever made a difference in your life, then you know it matters that they didn't go, who am I to do this work? It's the same thing for you. Don't do that. Don't go, who am I to do this work? I can't do it. You could be that person for somebody else. And when it comes to fear, the truth is that the fear doesn't go away before you start creating. And it might not even go away entirely, but it definitely loses its power when you create anyway, consistently over time. That's how you create the evidence that you can be visible and survive being visible, and that your ideas are worth sharing, that people will find value in what you put out there. That evidence is only available on the other side of having done it. You can't think your way into the confidence that comes from showing up. You have to show up to get it. You got to feel the fear. You got to notice the story it's telling you. You got to get out there anyway. Because the coaches who show up consistently are not the ones who just, they stopped being scared. They're the ones who stopped waiting to be fearless before they could put themselves out there. So I want to wrap this up. I know this is getting to be a longer episode, and so let's get into some takeaways. You don't need a perfect system. You need one that you'll actually use. Make sure you have a content bank for capturing ideas so that you are not trying to start from scratch every single day going, I don't know, what am I going to say something about today? If you have a batching process of some kind, then that will decouple creation mode from I got to be inspired every single day. And you got to set a bare minimum, like a floor, a bare minimum that is genuinely sustainable. I'm going to do this no matter what, even if life is a little busier than usual, even if I'm stressed. And then the work of looking honestly at what's underneath of all that inconsistency and fear about being visible. Hey, that is your work. And your life will be better off for you having looked at these things. And just a reminder that if visibility fear is really the issue here, no amount of scheduling or content creation systems will fix that. You've got to actually do the work. So I encourage you to start small, to go to your calendar now and find one batch session this week. Again, coachingblueprintprogram.com, the module on 4-hour marketing. It's the module I'm thanked for the most often. It's that entire program I created while I still had a salaried job and was standing up my coaching business. I update the program every single year. So I add to it, things of that nature. It's evergreen. It's yours. You don't have to pay more for the updates. It's yours as long as the program is in existence. And I suggest that you sit down and you find that 4-hour block and you batch process a lot of content, and then you schedule it out and you say, okay, it's done. And then notice what it feels like to have done it. How awesome it feels. Because that feeling, that small, quiet satisfaction of having shown up is what you're actually building toward. It feels good. You don't have to have a perfect content strategy. I don't. Nobody does. But you just do need that sustainable practice of being visible in service to the work that you are here to do. The work that really matters. All right, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Before you go, would you help us out and take a moment to give us a rating in iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you're listening? It really helps us get the word out to other listeners. And before you go today, would you like free resources to support your coaching journey? Whether you're considering becoming a coach or you want advanced coach skills training, access our coaching resource library at teamclcc.com. Again, that's teamclcc.com. Can't wait to connect with you. And again, thanks for listening.